This is a tough act to follow, and I'm between you and lunch. So the good news is I spent a lot of time in New York, so I can talk really fast if I have to. And I'll try and keep you all focused on being in the room for at least another 20 or 25 minutes or so. But it's a great pleasure to be here. I know that we've worked with many of the partners that are here in the room. I have great respect for the brands that just presented, and it's very hard to follow Robert Rodriguez, but I will tell you we can hopefully draft a little on his cool, because we're actually working with El Rey on integrating some of Wells Fargo's content into one of his shows. So I do feel like hopefully we can, yes, thank you. It's very exciting. Thank you to our friends at Acento for helping us on that. So I'm thrilled to be here. There's probably a clicker here somewhere, but it doesn't appear to be. Somebody walked off with a clicker. It's okay. So I can just signal and you guys can do this. So thank you. What I really want to share today is a little bit of Wells Fargo's journey, and it dovetails really nicely on the conversations we just heard. Thank you. Because, you know, as we think back on the Army conversation, that, you know, you're not your father's Oldsmobile. Well, we're not your great-great-great-grandfather's bank, and we've been around 160 years. And so some of the change that we heard people talking about that's hard to do with organizations that have been around for 20, 30, 60, 80 years, try changing one that's been around 160 years. But the reason Wells Fargo has been so successful is because we have changed and we have evolved by singularly focusing on our customers. And so what I want to take you through is a little bit of our journey, and hopefully we'll have time for a couple of Q&A as well. It all starts at Wells Fargo with our vision and values. And for many companies, sometimes this feels not quite real. This is an over 50-page document that's evolved through our history, but it grounds the company in how we operate. It's our cultural roadmap, if you will. And it's about a shared commitment to our customers and helping them succeed financially. And really there are three principles, and it guides everything we do, but is particularly important because it is the impetus behind our strategy around diverse segments. Knowing the customer. It has to all start with who is our customer, what are their needs, what are their preferences, what is it they want and expect from us, and how do we deliver that. Treating them with respect and kindness. It's how we expect to treat each of our 275,000 employees, who we call team members, as well as all of our customers. And finally, having integrity and transparency. And all of you know that the banking industry has taken its share of blows over the past several years around trust and authenticity and transparency. And so we know with this community in particular, but all communities, it's at our best interest to have open, honest dialogue with our customers. So a little bit about who Wells Fargo is. The reason that's so important to us, we serve 1 out of 3 households. We have over 70 million customers. We, as you can see here, are represented in every state, but particularly strong in the border states that are so important to the Hispanic market. So whether it's California, Arizona, Florida, or Texas, a very strong presence. We have over 55,000 team members who interact with our customers on a daily basis, whether those are mortgage consultants, financial advisors, or bankers. So very important that whatever we do mirrors the markets in which we operate, which basically means we have to mirror the population. That'd be helpful to just share a little bit about how marketing kind of fits into this Wells Fargo story. You know, what are our priorities as we think about the next 1 to 3 years? First and foremost, our job is to help enhance and strengthen the brand. We are very lucky. Wells Fargo is the 13th most valuable brand in the world. But that's a hard mantle to be on, right? Because there's an awful lot of people who are very valuable and doing great work. And particularly in the banking industry, our goal is not to be just the best bank, but to really be a brand that has tremendous respect across all brands. And so to do that, we have to continue to understand our customers' needs, continue to offer everything we can from a customer experience perspective. Digitizing the bank is a big priority for us, as well as managing data and, again, security and safety. Meeting the unique needs of the diverse segments, and they're building relationships and revenue. And we'll get a little more into this, obviously, looking at some of the data. But really, really important. Obviously, diverse segments are our biggest growth driver now and in the future. And while ideally, through data, we want to get to an audience of 1, where we can talk to each of you and individually, for now, we are also working through broad segments, where we have the opportunity to develop messaging that's obviously targeted and relevant as well. And then enhancing our core capabilities. Because we are in a very regulated industry, the risk environment, one of the things we have to do is make sure that we deserve to have the insurance that we carry on your behalf. And so being a very risk-oriented but also appropriate risk-taking organization. So now I'm going to shift gears and talk a little bit about our Hispanic strategy, why that's so important, and then we'll jump into the total market discussion. But obviously our Hispanic segment strategy to continue to attract Hispanic customers by delivering a customer experience So when we talked about total market, for us, think about the what and the how that meets their preferences and financial needs and acknowledges the diversity of the Hispanic community. We know, as an example, there's a very affluent subsegment of the Hispanic community. It's not one size fits all, it's not all alike. We need to make sure we pay particularly close attention to that. And the framework we're using is to really look at the levers that are relevant to in the financial industry. So what is the nature of the relationship people want to have with us, whether it's banking or other financial services? The asset tiers, how many assets do folks have now or in the future? Life stage, really, really important. Obviously, this segment skews younger, so looking at millennials, we know that millennials and therefore the younger Hispanics acquire the vast majority of their financial products in the years between ages 20 and 30. So if you think about those years, those are the years people graduate from college, have college loans if they've taken them out, get their first jobs, get their first cars, get their first homes, often get married and have kids. It's a lot of life events and life stages that happen in a very short period of time. And finally, cultural differentiators, and we'll talk more about that. But it's why we've looked through those lenses to make sure that we're relevant in terms of the products and services that we offer, that we're very cognizant of the role of language, and we'll talk more about that, and that we're doing everything we can through our business model to meet those needs. Why it's so important? I'm not going to dwell on this because I know you've been talking about this quite a bit over the last day. Obviously, huge growth potential. I'm just going to call out a couple of numbers on here. If the Hispanic population here was a separate country, it would be the 12th largest economy in the world. Obviously, the fastest growth rate, 167% of the growth in the U.S. will come from the Hispanic segment. And that last bottom right, very important chart, over 50% of our new households at Wells Fargo are expected to come from Hispanic customers. And just another little aside, right, as of today, over 50% of mortgages for first-time home buyers originate in the Hispanic segment. So a very, very important segment, absolutely fueling our growth today and in the future, something we know is critical to being successful. And by the way, as I said earlier, is also represented in the diversity of our team members. Right? We have 275,000 team members, over 40% of them millennials, and a good percentage of those Hispanic, particularly in the markets that serve Hispanic customers. So now let's talk total market. I'm going to throw up another definition because I noticed everyone taking pictures of the previous definitions, so then we can go back and probably compare them later. Because if there's one thing that's clear is there's not one definition of total market, and that we all do probably follow slightly different versions of it. But really importantly, the way we think about total market is a lot about the and, right? It's about the power of the and really both in terms of what we do as well as how we do it. And the what is really important, and we saw some of that in the discussions that were happening a few minutes ago, which for us, the what is, what are the products and services? What are the channels of distribution? What are the advice and guidance needs, the credit needs of the Hispanic customer? We know mobile first as an example. People want mobile banking on the go, and you'll see that how that feeds into our strategy. So first and foremost is the business strategy, which is what are the fundamental financial needs of this segment. But then the second piece of that is more around the messaging, and how do we communicate in a way that is powerful and relevant. And that's what I'm going to be spending the majority of the time on. So our definition of total market, and I said, is probably not way dissimilar, a lot of correlation to what I just heard. But total market is inclusive of Caucasian, Hispanic, African American, Asian, and LGBT consumers. Campaigns should reflect the increasing diversity of the U.S. population, as well as the impact of multiculturalism on American culture. Total market campaigns should use cultural cues and elements that come from ethnicities and draw on universal truths, like the importance of education for children or the desire for home ownership. So again, it's where is it common and where do we need to be custom? And that's another kind of model that we use, is common and custom. Common where possible, because it makes sense, and custom where it counts. This is probably a little bit easier way to think about it, and I know when I came into this role a couple of years ago, when we really kind of turbocharged, probably about 3 years ago now, when we kind of turbocharged this strategy, this was really the picture that meant the most to me, which is the realization that the total market is diverse. And that's just ground zero. That's where you have to start. And therefore, English-speaking customers have to be inclusive of diverse insights and have to be relevant to a broad array of customers. And one of the recent campaigns that we launched was something called Conversations. And that was a great example of what we did, was pull in a lot of the insights, but use that as a foundational campaign, and I'm going to share some others with you as well, that we took across the total market. But then there obviously are some very unique needs of diverse segments. Some of those are product needs, by the way, and this is the example here is something called Express Send, which is a global remittance product where people can send money back home. Obviously highly relevant for Hispanic, not as relevant for some of the other ethnic segments. So again, very important we start with the what is the need, and then how do we translate that? And thanks to our partners at Acento as well for helping us sort out a lot of this, and as well as bring in the insights and then help execute into the marketplace. Another example, though, of how this comes alive would be our sponsorship strategy. So 3 years ago, we had a lot of sponsorships, but they were mostly driven by local or regional needs and relationships. As of last year, we launched our first national sponsorship with Major League Soccer, something that very much resonates with the general population or the total market, obviously over-indexes for millennials and over-indexes for Hispanics. But in addition, we sponsored the Mexican national team, right? So another layer down into it to understand how we can be even more relevant to the Hispanic segment. So one other example of doing that. And then finally, I mentioned this earlier, but we are working with Robert Rodriguez on one of his shows to bring Wells Fargo's products and services in a relevant way around education and helping people understand finances into one of his shows. And back to that, his conversation, that's a total market execution, right? Although it obviously will appeal and bring insights in from the diverse segments. So our journey, it was interesting to hear Total Market started 10 years ago, really starts way back, long before I was with Wells Fargo, where we began doing Spanish language advertising back in the 1980s. That evolved to where we did bring Hispanic insights into our general advertising in the mid to late 2000 area, 2008. And then in the last year and a half, I think we finally got together on this total market strategy and execution approach. And what I want to share with you is a little bit of something from a campaign that we executed called Done. And before I share the commercials, I'll just share a bit of the history of that. Because I think before we knew it, we were actually operating with one of these integrated total market approach models, right? And I know the group before referred to that as the process. But we started out with knowing that we wanted to be acquiring more checking accounts. And the primary driver of checking accounts in our business is millennials. Because again, remember they're in that household formation stage. It makes common sense when people graduate, they kind of open up their first accounts. Often they move, and at that time they look for their kind of primary bank. We knew checking over-indexed on millennials as well as Hispanic, and so we very quickly narrowed down our target there. But it was more important was the insight that came both from Hispanic with that mobile-first orientation, as well as millennials, where banking has to fit into their lives. Right? And so for both the Hispanic customer as well as millennials and the intersection of those two, banking that is on the go, right, and that can work in your life was of critical importance. So bringing all of our agencies together, very importantly, we started from the beginning on ideation and concepting around that. And I will tell you that the best thing about that was it didn't even matter where the ideas came from. It didn't matter if they came from any one of our diverse agencies, our general agency. What mattered was that we brought insights together from all of those segments, and we're able to then identify a big idea that would transcend, but then also allow us to execute as appropriately in language with unique messaging. So what I want to show you first is one of the executions that we did called First Check. This featured one core capability, and then I'll show you another one and talk a little bit about the approach. So.
Hola a todos. Hey, guess what, guys? I got my first paycheck today.
So proud, sweetheart.
Thanks, Dad. Mi mamá, the bookstore job is great. Studies come first. I know, Mom. Hey, what's up?
Hey, Christian.
Ay, mira qué linda. She's taking a picture of her check. Want to deposit? No, I want to print your check. Listo, on your phone, online, on the go. Wells Fargo makes it easy to get banking done.
So obviously a lot of cultural cues, right, from the Hispanic market, the multi-generations, the bilingual, and this obviously English commercial aired in predominantly English media. We also did have an in-language version, but this was the one that actually ended up being leveraged the most. It resonated with all, both Hispanic and non-Hispanic markets. And you see sort of the having fun, the generational give and take, the in-language, all the cooking dinner, getting ready for the table, all of those cues kind of coming together. But again, a very strong performing ad for us, both within the Hispanic segment, but more importantly, across all of the segments. And then I'm going to share with you a second execution, which was something called Baby, and it's a father and a baby, and you'll probably have seen this. But what's interesting is we actually did do two executions of this, one in language, which is the one I'll show you, and then one in English. And then I will tell you what the only differences were between those two.
Eso, oye, me cae. ¿Verdad que sí?
Listo, señor Pérez. Gracias por hacer sus transacciones con Wells Fargo.
Gracias.
Hoy vamos a hablar sobre cómo recuperar su tiempo.
¿Listo? Vamos. Vamos a comer. ¡Sí, gol! ¡Oh, mi golazo! Sí, cariño, gol natural. Listo. Cheque. Listo.
Por teléfono, por internet o donde estés, Wells Fargo hace más fáciles tus transacciones bancarias. Y listo.
Great. So as I said, that was a bilingual actor, right, the cast. And so what we did was 2 executions. One was in English, one was in Spanish. The only differences between the 2 were a baseball game instead of a soccer game. So in the English version, he's watching a baseball game, although I will tell you, especially with our sponsorship now of Major League Soccer, that next time we'll do all soccer. And then also the use of 24-hour in-language customer service. So for the English-speaking audience, they know we have English-speaking, right, operators who are available 24/7 to assist our customers. But for this segment in language, it's very powerful that we actually have 24/7 in language service available. And so that was the only other difference between the 2, which just goes to show, I think, that we are increasingly finding ways to understand what is different and what's important to be different. In this case, the 24-hour service was hugely important to leverage. And the rest actually was very universal. The way the story unfolds is very universal. The humor is very universal. That would be helpful to show you how we measure these, because obviously a big piece of what we're doing is learning. We're on a journey. We don't have the hard and fast answers by any stretch, but this is the approach that we are taking to understanding, are we doing the right things, is it resonating, and what do we have to adjust or change? This is just one example. This was for the baby Spanish version, so the one we just saw. And we measure it, as you can see, on a whole host of different dimensions. Everything from relevance to brand imagery to emotional connection to impact to breakthrough. In this case, we were the recall actually almost doubled. The average recall for ads in this industry or in this segment were 17%. The recall on this one was 23%. So significant increase in recall. You can see where we broke through, obviously, on many of the dimensions above average. This is what we look for, right? Now, the baby ad in English did very well as well, and the first check also did well. Now, the first check in language did better than the first check in English, but the first check in English also broke through on many of the same dimensions. And so what that's helping us understand is what's the power of being in language for what messages, what's the power of not being in language, and what are the key components of these campaigns that resonate more generally. So this is just one example to share kind of how we think about measuring this. And then this gives you a broader look. We did look at this against Chase and B of A, particularly against their in-language ads also, because again, we're trying to understand what breaks through, what resonates. And you can see the 2 that are circled up there was first check and baby, so the 2 spots that we showed. So that's a very, very quick case study of Wells Fargo. Gives you a feeling for how we're pulling these pieces together. I think based on the conversations I heard this morning, very similar to what a lot of other folks are doing. We've probably been at it a little bit longer. I know the question came up here a few minutes ago, which was, when did total market kind of take hold? And I will tell you, I think at Wells Fargo, and our partners are here, but probably more about 3 years ago, that we really at least started taking action on it. I think it's been a concept of the company for longer than that. And I think, again, that comes from having roots in every market. And I think it helps us that our 275,000 employees mirror the communities that we're in and help us inform and drive a very diverse strategy as well at the top. Our journey into the future, increasing our commitment. I know I heard earlier, do these dollars trade off? How do you think about that? We think about we want to put as much money as we can behind the growth of our future, which is obviously the diverse segments and millennials. Continuing to reach our stakeholders, including our team members in language. And again, remembering that we have 55,000 team members that face off against our customers or with our customers, that in-language capability for them as well as our customers is going to continue to be important, and understanding when and how we need that in-language capability. The partnership between our agencies is obviously core to the success in this. I know that came up earlier as well, but it's everyone having a seat at the table at the beginning, way at the beginning, when we're first talking about, what's our strategy around this product or service, not just once it gets to the communication piece. And then finally, obviously leveraging and tying into some of these additional opportunities like sponsorships or integrated messaging into things like movies or TV is another great opportunity, again, to get more consistently reaching our target audience and hopefully ultimately increasing their engagement with Wells Fargo and increasing our ability to serve and help them through all those different life stages by connecting on more than just the financial need at the time. So I'm going to stop there. I think there's probably time for maybe a couple of questions. That was fast, so hopefully everyone stayed with me on that. So thank you.